May Wilder, Hans Wilder, my mother and father. There is no need to remember them that went ahead. I will always know them and can't forget, so needn't have to remember. Always they are there in the air around me, in the leaves and grass, in the hair standing up under horses' backs. Here they are in my words. On this page, they still stride before my eyes, and if only I could draw a picture as swiftly as my thoughts, they would be dancing, alive, in front of yours. They would be a picture any eye could plainly see. My mother and my father were known to me, known to the land they walked on, known to the horses, known to the trees, and known to me. Otherwise, they kept almost entirely to themselves. I shan't do that, can't do that, keep them to myself. In words and pictures, I will bring them out for everyone to see, and remembered they will be. Maggie was the only child of an industrious German couple who arrived in northern Pennsylvania with a small fortune to start them off. By the time Maggie was born, they had developed an orderly and prosperous farm, cleared hundreds of acres, plowed and cultivated using their teams of strong and solid drafts. Their horse stock was well chosen, well bred, and impeccably trained by Maggie's father, Hans. For Maggie, they were perfect friends. Before Maggie was 12, she could drive a team of 2 or 4 and ride any of the wide-backed geldings and mares. She covered ground on the back of a big horse. Maggie could catch flutterbys and dragonflies and frogs underwater with her bare hands, and name practically every plant living around her. She filled baskets with blackberries, raspberries, mulberries, barberries, strawberries, bilberries, rose hips, stream pebbles, flower blossoms, honey mushrooms, caterpillars, salamanders, and wild flowers. Maggie climbed the twisting fruit trees that her father had planted long before she was born, gathered plums and peaches, shook the apples sweetly ripened from their branches. She competed with squirrels for nuts. Maggie mostly talked to herself, talked as well to the horses, trees, bugs, and flowers, chatted through the garden as she weeded and dug for carrots. Her world was perfectly normal, with nothing else to compare it to. She never knew to feel lonely. Wild yams wove through patches of potatoes, rows of old-world turnips, giant parsnips, cabbage, carrots, sugar beets. Hills of pumpkins and squash spread under pole beans, growing up corn. Tangled hedges separated acres of alfalfa, lucerne, legumes, and clovers. Fields of oats, barley, English rye, and German wheat grew beside sloping hills of flax and sorghum. Narrow deer trails crisscrossed the hills, cutting edges into ridges. Turkeys flocked in the woods. Hans Wilder's was the most prosperous, well-managed farm in the region. Less fortunate immigrant families were attracted to the valley in the hopes of reaping such abundance. Maggie's father leased them sufficient land to farm in exchange for a fair portion of their hay and crops. His holdings sprawled across the hills. The hay fields, cropped 3 times a season, were stacked and forked into the barn lofts for winter fodder. In the heat of summer, the horses and tenant cows grazed the cool, untamed northern hills, gradually planting grass further with their droppings. In winter, the big horses emptied the lofts, heating their own barn in the process. Maggie spent long winter days brushing them, warming her hands in their breath. In exchange for a needed skill or added strength, Hans sometimes rented closer quarters to transients. Their best masons came and went this way, leaving only their work in the stone barn and house as evidence of their former presence. Thus, Maggie was regarded as a rich man's daughter. She was not aware of this, since she spent all of her life with her parents, there being no other surviving children in her home and none alive on the tenant farms who had time or want enough to play with her. They'd been told that her mother was a witch and always ran from sight of her when they were busy herding geese and goats over a far hill. Once they felt her stare, they ran out calling, "Kleine Hexe, little witch."